And so we're at another Monday and time for a chat with Pat. How are you today, Pat? Storm.
I should start off with my wee grandson's down here today. He's 4 and he was getting out of the car and he says, Granda, why is your hair white? Grand, how would you explain
that? Lucky it has that kind of question addressed to you.
But doesn't matter. Don't have that much hair anymore in it. But I thought it was a great question. He says, my daddy's hair's not white. And he says, my Uncle Aaron's hair isn't white. Where's your hair white? If you've got half an hour, maybe you could explain it to my grandkid, would you?
Kids don't mess around. They go straight to the point, you know.
Anyway, it's a nice day here, Jude. The sun's out, and after about 16, 17 days of continuous heavy gale force winds, it's actually sort of mild today, and it's quite warm, actually.
Yeah. Spring's on the way. Better times ahead, even in these dark days. Okay, let's look at some of the things happening domestically and internationally. Let's start with Doug Beattie and Sir Geoffrey Donaldson. They're having a bit of a, he said, you said, I said, no, you didn't. You said it. It started with Geoffrey being confronted by Nolan with the fact that he had, I think we talked about this, that they had, he had meeting with or I didn't say meeting, he had contact with the UUP about returning to the UUP fold. Yeah. He said he had been contacted, he had politely declined, and that was the end of it. But Doug Beattie's going and saying something more than that. So do
from what the bits I could gather this morning, it's taken a strange. Gavin Robinson was on yesterday morning, and he was doing the usual one, referring to it as tittle tattle. And I am not going to discuss something based on anonymous sources. Jude, right away, if that's the best, if there was nothing to it, this is rubbish, bang, bang, bang. And I'm not, this sort of, I am not discussing something that tittle tattle from anonymous sources suggests, hey, wait a minute, there's something here. Anyway, that's the first thing. Secondly, Doug Beattie apparently is a bit annoyed. He's saying there are people in the background. He said he said nothing last week because of Christopher Stalford's death, and he thought out of respect he wouldn't say anything about the DUP. He said he held his wished, as it were, said nothing. But he says in the background there's been all sorts of briefing against him that it's rubbish and all the rest. So what, Jude, this is my interpretation, shorthand version of what's happened was when Geoffrey lost the election to Edwin Poots. He was very disaffected, etc. And I presume what happened was Doug sent him would you consider rejoining us? And apparently, by all accounts, Geoffrey must have been, he must have taken the bait some way because they agreed to meet up, and they met up at Thiepval Barracks. I can never pronounce that properly. Thiepval Barracks, and apparently had a meeting that lasted over an hour. Beattie is claiming this morning that there are people saying that there's rubbish and he was fishing with a long line and all the rest of it. So he's basically what he's saying, if people want to keep on, he says, briefing against him and questioning his integrity, he will release his version of the text that he has. Jude, that could be very interesting.
Yeah, he says he has good documentary evidence, I gather.
Yeah. People are suggesting that it's rubbish and it didn't happen and he's spinning this for his own benefit and all that sort of stuff. So I presume he's wait a minute, this was deadly serious. And if you think you're going to impugn my integrity by saying that this is all fairy tale stuff and it's coming from me, etc., I'll prove that what I'm saying is the truth.
Well, I would take this thing about impugning people's integrity with a pinch of salt. I think that actually what Doug is saying is, I have the goods on you, mate, and I almost certainly will deliver these goods at some point. And you're going to be one sorry man. I wonder, you see, one of the things that isn't clear, well, Geoffrey didn't make it clear at all whether they actually had met or talked over the phone. But since we now know they've met, I wonder, did Doug Beattie say to Geoffrey, I want to talk about you returning to the UUP and we'll have a meeting? Or did he say, well, things are in a terrible state now. I know you're feeling it's tough. Why don't we have a chat and leave it open? I suspect the second of those two. I suspect Doug didn't commit anything. And then when they got together, Doug obviously has got some documentary stuff that makes clear. Maybe he's doing a Nixon. Maybe he's taping every word. maybe. Allegedly.
In the background,
That's all right. I gathered my exit the last time was a source of great merriment. If you check, incidentally, we should tell both our listeners or our viewers that there is a section where you can comment beside the YouTube, and there's been quite a bit of comment. There's been some controversy, in fact, but one guy did say that my sudden exit and return was hilarious.
The best thing about the whole interview.
Anyway, back to Doug. Doug looks like he's landed a blow, a serious blow on poor Jeffrey. Like, when your troubles come, they come not single, spies.
Absolutely.
You think things couldn't get worse. Now he's been accused, and it looks like it's not just an accusation, it seemed to be a fact, that he considered the notion of joining the UUP. It doesn't take you an hour. It was an hour-long meeting. It doesn't take an hour to say no.
Jude, I know this, the sort of the pretext or whatever, I don't know what word you'd use, or the cover story is they were there to discuss unionist unity. That was Jude, right, here's the thing. Here's a very, unionist unity could be discussed up at Stormont. Why did two guys meet in an army barracks away from prying eyes?
Oh, yeah, of course, because people would draw the conclusions that they were talking about something they didn't want people to hear. And they would have been dead right if they had drawn those conclusions. It's very interesting. I am astonished, I have to confess, I'm astonished that the UUP has sort of resurrected itself under Doug Beattie's leadership.
Yeah.
You know, I would have thought that the submarine man would have been more likely to actually have led them to sunny uplands rather than Doug.
I listened to Doug Beattie, and I know you said his previous life as an army guy and some of the stuff, his postings. I haven't seen those, but purely on listening to him in interviews, he always strikes me as moderate and sort of reaching out, and accepting, like he's Mike Nesbitt Mark II, but better at it.
Yeah, well, he seems to be more acceptable to people, but Nesbitt was a much clearer communicator, I think, than Doug.
Yeah.
No, Doug's he's sort of warm. He's kind of warm.
Scared the horses and the unionism because he was. Doug seems to, Doug's better at it. He's not scaring the horses, and he's still reaching out. Maybe the fact that he's an army man might have something to do with it.
And he's like one of Napoleon's generals. Remember, Napoleon always picked his generals that were lucky. It wasn't their ability. So I think Doug was very lucky that he's the man that's on the spot at just the right time when the DUP are vulnerable.
He did an affairs of man. It wasn't in Shakespeare said you just had to catch it at the tide.
That's right. There is a tide in men's affairs. Do you see Doug's party matching the DUP? I mean, at one stage they were ahead of them in the polls, in the opinion polls. Do you see them in the actual election?
Last week, you asked that question nearly the same way, but here's the point. Last week I wasn't sure. This week I think the DUP are sort of hold below the waterline. Dude, there's too many things starting to happen to the DUP. Can you imagine if you're in Portadown or Ballymena and here today, wait a minute, the leader of the DUP actually was going to leave and join, even if it's not true, it's out there. Then there's the whole thing about, Poots getting shafted. The DUP don't know whether they're going right, going left, or going down the middle. Then there's their handling of Brexit. There's the protests, and then what's it called? Poots checkpoints.
Don't forget Sammy.
And there doesn't seem to be any cohesion or unity in the party. The leader has no say. I think all I was going to say the TDs, all the MPs, they might soon be TDs, all the MPs can say what they want, do what they want, and there's no uniformity. Sammy Wilson has said things in the past that were total contradiction, particularly in regard to COVID and vax, that were not party policy, but he just came out with them and got away with it. If he had been in another party, they would have been sort of lost the party whooping, told to get the hell out.
Well, I interpret these these sudden eruptions here, right, left, and centre, different people saying different things. It's the kind of thing that happens when people are frightened. If you've ever been in a situation where, God, something's going to happen, one person saying, do this. Oh, so no, don't do that. Do something else. And people are sort of bashing into each other, trying to come up with a solution because they're so scared. I think there's something of that in the DUP. There's so many sort of leaks springing right, left, not literal leaks now, but there's so many people saying things, different things, that are clashing with each other, that they're not, there's no coherence and clarity in terms of what they are saying and what they plan to do. And the public,
I think you said it last week or the week before, no, people don't like disunity. As a matter of fact, they don't like incompetence. And at one stage, the DUP, it was una voce, one leader, one voice. By God, that's fairly.
No more. Well, it'll be very interesting. I think we'll have to get somebody on. Maybe we'll get Chris Donnelly or somebody to come on and talk about the various seats. I have a funny feeling that the popularity of Sinn Féin in comparison or contrast with the DUP may not translate into the same number of seats.
I agree with that as well. I am not one of the, there's a name for those people.
Nerds.
That's the nerds. Psephologists, certainly. They do all these crunching of numbers. I'm useless at that, so there's no point in me. But
Chris Donnelly, he's used that word of himself. He says, I said, how do you know all this stuff? He says, that's because I'm a nerd.
Yeah. But in the past, Jude, the Sinn Féin's actual polling numbers haven't quite been matched, and they're polls and opinion polls haven't been matched at the electoral polls.
No, well, that's been plus and minus as well. They haven't done as well electorally sometimes in the north, and they did spectacularly better last time round. Well, it's all very interesting, and it's going to get better before it gets worse.
Yep.
Better. What I mean by better is more entertaining before it becomes serious. Okay, let's stop smiling and laughing and giggling, and let's get to something that has put the fear of God into anybody, and that is the Putin and the Ukraine. Now, we talked about this last week. I have a couple of things I want to say quickly about this. One is, clearly, for the last couple of days, the absurdity that we have had people here who have time and again urged us to resolve our political differences peacefully is strictly for the birds. Everybody that I heard on Talkback today was in favor of violence. So it's a question only of who are you going to aim your violence at to get a certain political outcome. It's not a question of that you're opposed to it. It's a question of when you're going to use it. So I would really wish that commentators, journalists would come clean with that and politicians could come clean with that kind of thing. That so of course we believe in violence in certain circumstances, but all the time that the troubles were coming to an end, they were being told, Sinn Féin particularly, being told, you've got to resolve, you never get anywhere with violence. Well, there are some people who would say Sinn Féin got somewhere with violence, or the IRA got somewhere with violence, at least. In this case, everybody is saying yes. And in fact, Liz Truss is saying, if you want to go out and fight in Ukraine, go for it. I just think that's bad. I think it's bad. If she's not prepared to go herself, don't be urging other people to do it. That's part of my gripe. What do you think?
I'm not sure I agree with you, Jude. Like, Ukraine is under threat from a country. What 400,000 troops? They have 250,000 on and they have another 150,000 or something. And they have, I think, Ukraine don't have any submarines. They don't have anything else. And Ukraine is not the aggressor. If you're going to fight for Ukraine, you're fighting for your homeland. Yeah. You didn't go out to use force. You're using force.
Oh yeah, they are going to have to use force. I'm not saying they're not.
But hold on, you're going to have to use force in the same way. If somebody come in my door with a gun and I could find a gun with it before he gets a chance to shoot me, I am totally entitled to shoot him in self-defense because I didn't go into his home. I didn't come to do him any harm. All I am doing is defending myself. Now, if the Ukrainians are going to use force to expel the Russians, morally, I don't have a problem.
Well, I don't know. I'm not quarreling with the morality of it at all. I think I agree with you completely. If you believe in sovereignty of a country, then they've got a right to fight. But my point is that forever and ever, we've listened to Blair, we've listened to Clinton. I don't know how many other international leaders saying the only way to do is resolve differences peacefully. I mean, they don't believe a bloody word of it. Their actions tell you the opposite. And seems to me such an obvious case. So I really hope one good thing might come out of this is that people will stop saying this thing. The only way to resolve political differences is peacefully. There are some political differences that appear we only can address them by violence.
I'm not sure. I think what you're doing is an abstract. So the reality is on the ground. The Russians only came in last, what was it, Thursday? Right now everybody's sort of fight back and stop them and all the rest. If there was real negotiations and all the rest of it, I presume most people would say, hey, if we can stop the fighting, stop the killing, stop the dying, we would do it as of now. But the reality is the West isn't anxious for war. There's no British or NATO troops on the ground. The Americans certainly aren't going to send in anybody else. The pure Ukrainians are on their own.
But they're sending in weaponry. And in fact, there's trust. Okay, and I'm not. Don't get me wrong, Pat.
You're missing the point. They're sending them in to help the Ukrainians defend themselves.
Yes, I agree completely. I'm just saying they're part of the violence that's occurring in the Ukraine today.
You're just sitting all there.
No, I'm not. I'm simply saying, listen, Pat, there was a time when if that had happened, a similar situation had happened here, they'd be saying, oh, you're the guy that bought the gun, that gave it to that terrorist to shoot that poor person. What Britain is doing and what the international community is doing is they're sending weapons to continue violence or to overcome the violence of Putin. That's all I'm saying. They believe in violence.
I know, and I know the point you're making, but what else can they do? They're trying to expel an invader. I don't think they're encouraging violence. What they're doing is encouraging defense.
That's violent defense, Pat. It's violent defense. I look again. People always
even the Catholic Church, and remember all this, the old padre. Excuse me, you the boys had two brothers preach. Don't you preach to me?
Don't you preach to me?
So the old Catholic Church used to have the padres bless the troops.
I know. Rubbish. It was rubbish. I agree. It was rubbish. Actually, here's the thing for you. If anybody claims to be Christian, they should have no hand, act, or part in fighting of any kind. Full stop.
All right. Okay. You're getting ridiculous now.
I'm not being ridiculous. I'm not being ridiculous.
The Russians, hold on, Jude. Are you saying the Russians should be entitled to walk in? And no, if you're a real pacifist, you should not. I'm
saying if you're a real Christian, you would be a pacifist.
But sure, that's an impossibility.
It's not an impossibility. The Quakers are not. I suppose the Quakers are. They are Christian, aren't they? Yeah, and they never will have anything to do with violence. It doesn't matter what's happening. They're not going to do it.
Richard Nixon was a Quaker.
Was he?
So there goes that theory out the window.
I rest my case. Anyway, here's another point with the guy. Go ahead. You go first, Pat.
No. Do you think that the Irish government should expel the Russian ambassador?
No.
Why not?
Because I just think it's a gesture. It doesn't matter two toots. Do you think it's like a Skibbereen Eagle saying, I've got my eye on you, Russia, you watch yourself? Hey, do you think that Putin gives a damn whether Ireland expels the Russian ambassador or not? It doesn't matter. It's a bloody distraction by the Irish government. I'll tell you something I do not know, and this was raised by Donald Kennedy in a blog on my blog site. He said, where did all the Ukrainian flags come from that were used in the demonstration in Dublin? There were people who wouldn't have known what the Ukrainian flag's colors were, and yet there was loads of them a week ago, and then yesterday and the day before, they were all over the place. Yeah. His point is that those demonstrations are being orchestrated.
For God's sake, Jude, that's ridiculous.
Why, Pat?
Jude,
why is it ridiculous?
If there was somebody organised, what do you call it? I live in a wee small village. If somebody came, hey Pat, we're having a wee sort of a solidarity thing with Cool Rain. I was going to say Ukraine. I'd be down there in 5 minutes. I'm not being subverted. I'm not being subversive. There's nobody organising it. And if the day of Donegal plays Tyrone.
I knew you'd bring that up. I knew you'd bring that up.
The fact that Donegal won, I'm not go there. But if you're going to do Ballabafay or Oma ground, they have no shortage of flags. Flags can be produced in 10 minutes. Good God, give us a break.
having Ukrainian flags. I mean,
Yeah,
Tyrone flags. Tyrone has so
Well,
many supporters. There's thousands and tens of thousands of flags.
That's conspiracy theory writ large.
No, I disagree with you, Pat. Look, remember the time they went into Iraq and they had that scene where they pulled down the Iraqi people were pulling down the statue of Saddam Hussein and they were cheering and all. And it was that whole thing was a setup.
Of course
it was a setup. And everybody took it as being for real. Here we are liberating these people and they can't wait to get shot of Saddam Hussein.
Here's the point.
It was funny.
Person after person has been interviewed on the BBC. I've watched Sky. I've watched CNN. The Ukrainians are 42 million people up against a place of 200 million. We're up against a huge and all the rest of it. There's solidarity. I don't think there's an Irish person anywhere that we know what it's like to be on the receiving end of a.
I agree. I agree.
So I don't think there's any. Nobody has to organise anything for me to go to. If they said tomorrow morning in Derry, look, there's going to be a solidarity meeting in the Guildhall, I'd be there. And if I could get a wee bit of blue and yellow flag, I would be waving it.
Well, I'm just quoting what this man said in his short blog. He asked this question: where did all these Ukrainian flags come out of? And I'm just referring back to another occasion, very public occasion, which was caught on camera, where they pulled down Saddam Hussein's statue and had the Iraqi people cheering. And we find out now it was all.
The first casualty of war is truth.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Pat, I'll tell you something. I agree. I'd be very, very largely on the side of the Ukrainian people. But I think when history writes this, if we ever get past this, if we don't get the world blown up, history will look back and if it's going to be honest, it'll say things like it wasn't actually black hats and white hats.
No, it wasn't. No,
it was polka dot hats.
I mean, we said this, and I said it. I agree with you last week. Putin has actually got a case. That's how he's made it the case. It's the disappointing thing. He definitely, when Reagan and Gorbachev, 1990, when the sort of Iron Curtain came down, there was a deal made. I don't know, Jude. I don't know whether it was, as I said the last day, I don't know whether it was an international agreement, whether there was a formal treaty. I don't know. But the deal was that NATO would not go any further eastwards. And Ukraine was supposed to be almost like a buffer state. And Putin and Russia, for their own security and for a whole lot of other reasons, saw that as a red line for them. Now along comes NATO, and they pushed out, of course, what do you call it, the Russian guy, the last thing. But Jude, he's got a point. But Ukraine, what he's basically saying, Ukraine as a democratic country doesn't have a right to make its own. They want to go west. They want to be part of the EU. They like the freedoms. They like their lifestyle. Apparently, I don't know enough. Kiev apparently is like the Paris of that area. It's a beautiful city and so on. Here's the point. I wrote it down. 2008, Putin invaded Georgia. 2014, he annexed what do you call it, Crimea. That Donbass area, there's been 14,000 deaths. And because of Russian separatists, there's a war going on there, and Russia is fomenting that and sort of bankrolling it. So this guy is not sort of white hat either. There's a lot of stuff.
Oh no, I wouldn't for a moment say that, Pat. I wouldn't for a moment say that.
I didn't mean to imply you were saying it, but what I'm saying is, you've got 100%. I agree with you 100%. It's not as black and white as some people in the West are making it.
Here's we'll just leave this at this because so many words have been spilled in this topic. If you knew somebody, I'll not say your son's say, but if you knew a young guy who was from Donegal or Derry or wherever, who was planning to go out to Ukraine and stand by and fight alongside the Ukrainians, would you give him your blessing, so to speak? Yeah. I wouldn't.
I would.
I wouldn't. I really wouldn't.
I don't think he should go, but I would give him a blessing because I think sometimes on the side are right. Like this is not right. What's happening to the Ukrainians?
Yeah. Well, okay. Let's leave it at that now. Let's move to another topic, which is much more cheerful. Did you watch the match yesterday?
What a game!
I'm talking about Donegal and Tyrone now. I'm not talking about Donegal and Tyrone.
Tyrone lost that, so don't just go and try into your own tea. I was watching. Sport can be a brilliant thing. I was watching. It was a great match. In fact, I was supposed to go and do a bit of exercise and I started watching that game. It's the best 0-0 game I've ever seen, I think.
Oh yeah.
It was end to end. It was fantastic football. Dude, I've gone off football quite a lot because, like I've got zero interest in watching Burnley taking on Wolves.
Yeah.
But for some reason, Liverpool versus Chelsea yesterday, and of course the thing about young Kevin Kelleher, 23 years old from Cork. He's played very well during the match. And then they're the best penalties, by the way. The English team should watch that video and learn how to take penalties. It's the best penalty shootout I think I've ever seen.
Well, but I thought, to be honest with you, I was a bit disappointed in the keepers. Neither of the keepers came near to saving any of the penalties.
But hey,
I suppose that's maybe a testament to how good they were.
But this guy, the Chelsea guy, he's the most expensive, whose name totally escapes me at the moment.
Me too.
He's the most expensive keeper in the world, and I thought he was brought on to try and get into the outside. They started doing all the dancing beforehand, and coming up and all that sort of stuff. So I was glad he got his comeuppance as well. But
he's the guy that wouldn't come off, Pat. He's the guy that wouldn't come off. Do you remember that game?
And
the manager said, "Come off," and he wouldn't come off. He stayed on.
He lost out again yesterday. But as arrogance, there is karma in this world. But young Kevin Kelleher, they scored the one goal in the cup final. That's what Royal the Rover stuff, isn't it?
Oh, it was brilliant. He had really good penalty he took as well.
Absolutely.
It was. He just slammed it back, cool as ice. But as I say, I was a bit disappointed. I was hoping that he might. In the course of the penalty shootout, that he might, make a few saves or come very, very close to it. I didn't think either of the keepers really did that. But I was checking out on Kevin's great name, Kevin Kelleher's name and his background. He has an older brother who plays for Bradford in defence. And he has three other older brothers, who play hurling. I don't know, where are they from? Are they from Cork? He sounded like more like Dublin to me.
No, he's Cork. He's apparently he's about 6'4". He's
very tall.
Apparently he was a very good. Apparently, as a teenager, he was a very good outfield player. And one day they were stuck, and they stuck him in goals for 6'4" and all the rest. And apparently he was outstanding. And from there, Jude, he's now playing for Liverpool, and he's unbelievable. Alisson is regarded as probably the best keeper in the world, and he's keeping him out of the Liverpool. But Liverpool have signed him to a long-term contract. That young fella will be very well looked after financially.
I'm delighted for him. I really, really am delighted. I thought there's something boyish about him, and he didn't look like a goalkeeper. He wasn't, usually a big bulky guy. He's sort of slim, and yet he's so effective. And the other thing is, he is astonishing, in my opinion. I mean, I don't look at men very much, but he is astonishingly handsome. He's a very good handsome young fella. So they should be
figure of Irish malehood.
Yeah, he should get he should get a manager or somebody, an agent, to sell his wares. Say, I use this toothpaste. That's why I'm so good looking.
And I'll get paid $5 million for that.
Well, it was a hell of a good game. And I was delighted that Liverpool won it. I've gone off. I mean, it's not just the fact that guy is a Russian, the guy that owns Chelsea.
Abramovich.
Yeah. I never liked the look, to be honest with you. It wasn't just that made me wish that Liverpool. There's something about Liverpool I like a lot. I'll tell you, I like the fans a lot. When they're beaten, they'll still sing, "We'll support you."
And as well as that, they've stuck by the club, and it's more than a club to them. And by the way, Klopp to me is the perfect manager. He's a man, and of course he's a rabid socialist, which I like as well. Absolutely. He says, "I have no problem paying tax. I'm quite willing to pay it." And he seems a pretty decent guy as well.
But mind you, Paddy, he's earning so much.
But he
only can afford to.
Of course he is, but that's if they're willing to pay him. If somebody offered me 8 to 10 million a year, and I think that's what he's on at minimum, I would.
He's worth every penny of it, in my opinion. Absolutely. Every penny of it, because he built that. I nearly said that Russian team, that Liverpool team. He built them.
He arrived, they've won a European Championship or whatever, and they've won the World Club Championship. They've won the Carabao Cup. They've won the league. You tell me.
great stuff.
He's absolutely brilliant.
Great, great, great. See, there's always cheerfulness in the world, Pat, when you look for it enough. And Tyrone will live to fight another day. I just say that. Just say that in that particular game. Okay. Anyway, I prefer soccer. Okay. Right, Pat. Thanks a lot.